Hey humans, I'm Harley Salbacka.
And I'm canonically dead, cool guy Anthony Mauro, and today we're stoked to have Eisner and GLAAD Award-nominated writer Cullen Bunn to discuss his newest boom book, GHOSTLORE.
Since this is our Halloween episode, Cullen, how do you like to celebrate Halloween? Are you a Halloween person?
Oh yeah, my studio outside my office is like my Halloween village is set up all year round. I don't take it down. It's my favorite month. Mainly because the weather gets nice. It's kind of the way I like weather. It's what I like to feel. But I go to haunted houses all month long. I do horror movie trivias, a couple of times a week. I put my son and I put on a haunted house in our garage. So
that's amazing.
I'm all in on Halloween.
Do you do your own personal screenings of Empty Man with your commentary for your friends?
They're tired of me doing that. So
What?
I just have that on
every time my friends come over, I'm like, guys, guess what? Guess what we can watch.
When does the festivities officially start for you?
It starts as soon as I feel that little bit of cool in the air.
Yes.
Love that. Let's talk about GHOSTLORE a little bit. So it's a very different kind of ghost story. People have read it. It's a few issues have been out by this point. I actually think
the first arc is done, right?
But yes, and I believe the first issue of Arc 2 is coming out 2 days before this episode drops. So that's Perfect. Very exciting. So what draws you to ghost stories, and what made you want to kind of tell your own weird one with GHOSTLORE?
Well, I've always liked ghost stories. I mean, it's just I was always being, ghost stories were always part of my life growing up. My dad used to tell them, my family members used to tell them, my friends used to tell them. And so I've always just been drawn to them anyway. There's just something about the eeriness and the creepiness and the joy of trying to scare each other by telling stories. There's that. So I've just always been fascinated by them. And ghosts, to me, of all the monsters, of all the creatures that could get me, ghosts are the ones that scare me the most. I feel like ghosts, I think I can get away from everything else. A ghost,
because they just appear. They can appear anywhere, technically. Yeah. So that is scarier.
So I've just always been fascinated by it. I mean, I don't go ghost hunting. I don't go out and wander through haunted houses asking for trouble. But,
sure.
But I want to believe in that. I want to believe in, and I've had weird things happen. I don't know if anything's supernatural, but I've had weird ghostly things happen. But it's just always encouraged me to want to believe it. So when I started working on GHOSTLORE, I knew I wanted to do something about ghosts, and I knew I wanted to do something where I could tell different kinds of stories in every issue. So there's the overarching story, but there's also, individual ghost stories in every issue.
I love just in the first issue how it happens so fast. It happens so immediately after, I don't want to give too much away, but right. Something happens where all of a sudden we have a father and daughter who can see ghosts. But it happens so fast too. And I found it fascinating that immediately they all were rushing because they all had things to say and were unheard. And I feel like that's weirdly very relatable just in general as people, because we all want to be heard.
Yeah, I think that is. I mean, every time I'm writing one of the scenes where the ghosts are kind of begging to be listened to, I think to myself, this is really what everyone wants. We just want to be heard. We want to be understood. Mm-hmm. And It feels like that's almost an impossibility sometimes. It feels very it just feels like such a challenge to just be heard.
Especially if you're dead.
Well, yeah, I mean, and think about that. You're dead. This is your last chance. This is it. Yeah. Somebody listen. Yeah. For goodness sake. One of the things that I really wanted to do was have that parent-child dynamic, especially older teen, young adult, middle-aged parent, that I felt like that dynamic and the differences between those two, and the fact that, I mean, my son's a teenager now, and I know that there are times where I feel like we can't communicate and we're not on the same page, even though we're trying to be. And I feel like that it kind of just adds to that frustration of not being able to communicate. These two, Lucas and Harmony, approach things very differently. And it drives a big wedge in between them for a while in the series. So I really wanted to deal with that. As far as why a father and a daughter, I don't know. It felt right at the time. I was, at the time I was kind of brainstorming it. That's what felt like the right thing for the book.
Do you believe in ghosts or spirits?
I want to. I've seen some weird stuff, and I don't know. I don't know if it's I was dreaming, hypnagogic state, whatever. I used to. There was a while right when I was in college that every night there was this old woman standing at the foot of the bed, and she was just
terrifying.
And She was just whispering. She was always in shadow, and she was just whispering. And sometimes she would kind of like roll up to the bed, and I just thought, okay, this is night terrors. I'm dreaming, and it's happening. But I worked with this guy at a bookstore, and he was sort of a spiritualist, and he and his wife would go, and they were actually like Ghostbusters. They would go out and exercise houses. And I told him about it, and he said, well, can I come over and check things out? And I said, yeah. And he came to my apartment, and he walked into the apartment. He looked in the bedroom, and he says, this is the bed. I said, yep. He said, get rid of the bed and you'll never see her again. And I never slept in that bed again, and I never had another night. So it could have all been, the power of mental influence. But,
right.
It was kind of weird.
Was it a secondhand bed that you got?
It was an antique bed. It was an old bed, but
your bed was haunted?
Could have been a dream. Could have been a ghost. Who knows? These days, we're all dreams, man. It's
true.
Strange times we're living in, for sure.
Right.
What makes ghost lore different than all of them? Because ghost lore definitely feels a little bit like your magnum opus. For sure. Everything you've done before, while also paying homage to your library of work. I mean, you're coming back with a lot of your artistic collaborators on the ghost stories within the issues, illustrated by the great Leo Max, by the way. Shout out to Leo Max.
Yeah, he's so
phenomenal great. Artist. Loved his work he did with Joe Hill over at DC.
I was at a bar one night working on a few things, and I got like an issue of Ghost Lore came in while I was there. I got it through email to do a lettering pass, and I started doing, going through the pages, and I was doing my work. And I bet there were 20 people kind of crowded around behind me just because they wanted to see what Leo Max said. They were like, what is this? And they were fascinated that someone, a living person actually did that work. And,
his shading work is incredible.
Yeah, really great. Everything I do, I want to be different. I want it to, kind of stand on its own. And Ghost Lore in particular, when I first started kind of conceiving what I do with it, I knew it was going to be a 12-issue series. And I knew it was going to be on the shelf in theory next to Basilisk and Bone Parish. And those were the two that I was kind of like, okay, what exists in the world of these books? Not that they could take place in the same world, or maybe they do, who knows? But that I wanted it to fit with those, but be very different than those series. So I think what the things that set it apart are really the things that set horror stories apart in general from one horror story apart from another. Is it all hinges back on the characters. It's got to be, characters are the, you can have 1,000 werewolf books, and it's the characters in those werewolf books that are going to set those stories apart. So right. I think that's what's just really, really different is a lot of the stuff I work on. I do a lot of stuff with like family elements. But I don't think this is a book. It's more, it's two leads. and it's, you know, a dysfunctional family going through some really terrible things, and how they interact, and you know, how they care for each other even though they don't show it necessarily. I feel like that's the element that kind of sets it apart, is that family element. And you know, as the series progresses, like a lot of my stuff does, it gets bigger and bigger, and Harmony and Lucas are going to be dealing with some you know, pretty, you know, vast supernatural issues.
Yay.
But yeah, and the question's going to be, you know, do they come together? Do they fall apart? You know, and I'm not one to say my heroes don't always make it. You know, I don't write stories where the heroes necessarily get out, you know, succeed. I don't think that's realistic.
True. That's very true.
That's fair. What are your personal recommendations for people, whether it be movies, music, books, comics, general life experiences?
Well, first of all, to be completely, let's be self-serving for Boom first. In October, The Empty Man's going to be on Hulu. So if you haven't seen The Empty Man and you have Hulu, it premieres on Hulu on October 1st. So there's a great horror movie you can watch right there.
And it's fantastic. It is a fantastic horror movie.
Yes.
There's something about reading short stories. I think I'm really into short story mode when it comes to Halloween. I just read Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Shaw, which is this it's this great ghost story where a group of friends one of them decides they want to get married in a haunted Japanese castle. So they go and things happen, you know, and it's a novella. So it's a real short read, but it's got a great punch. It's real, you know, it's just a great creepy read. Wild Spaces by S.L. Coney is talk about a road story. It's a boy and his dog and these Lovecraftian mythos creatures kind of encroaching in the world.
Ooh.
And again, it's a novella that just recently came out. So I'm really into that. Don't Fear the Reaper, which is by Stephen Graham and Stephen Graham Jones, and that book is the second book in a trilogy. But if you like slasher novels, it's a great slasher novel, and those two books present such a history of the slasher movie genre. You'll feel like an expert when you are done reading them. The first one is called My Heart is a Chainsaw. It's been out for maybe a couple of years. And then Don't Fear the Reaper just came out a few months ago. But yeah, Stephen Graham Jones, they're super cool novels.
All of those sounds so good. I also feel like reading short stories around Halloween makes me think of like Edgar Allan Poe, right? Because that's what he did. He was the short story, like early horror king. And I feel like that's maybe why I always want to read them, because I'll go reread Edgar Allan Poe during Halloween. So
I always try to pick up like a horror, like short story collection around October to have that be my what I read throughout the month.
And then I watch a bunch of horror movies. I kind of fell off. I already started for this year. I'm watching a horror movie every day and then kind of documenting it on my website. I'm a few days behind. I need to update it. But yeah, I'm trying to watch some I've already seen dozens and dozens and dozens of times. Some I'm seeing for the first time. But yeah, I'm trying to document those on my website too.
Occasionally, we have a segment of the show we call Got It Covered, where we answer some questions for a viewer. And today we have a question from Susan Damon.
Okay.
So Susan Damon asks, I'm just wondering if Cullen has a real life ghost story or paranormal experience that he'd like to share for spooky season. So you obviously already shared your haunted bed story, but do you have any other ones?
It's not a ghost story. So when I was 4 or 5, I'm pretty sure it was pre-kindergarten. So if I was 5, I wasn't 5 for long. We lived in this little farmhouse in Newton Grove, North Carolina. And it was a kind of a big house, but it was old, and it had a sink that looked out, like the sink had a window over it. And if you looked out that window, there's an apple tree sitting out in the backyard. And I remember I had to sit on a stool to get to the sink, but I remember, or stand on a stool. And I was standing on the stool. I was washing my hands or something. And I looked out at the apple tree. And as I did, this man crawled out from under our house, like basically right from under where I was standing. He crawled out, walked up to the apple tree, and he picked an apple. And then he got back down and he crawled back under our house. And
what?
Yeah. And that has stuck with me and haunted me because he crawled like a spider. Yeah, he was very, I told my mom immedately, and she freaked out, and she called my dad, and he came home from work, and he crawled under the house and to see what was going on. And he said, I never went under there. He said, but it's obvious someone's been living under there. And he said there are dozens of apple cores all around under the house. He's been picking apples off the tree and eating them. That's how he was saying, it was a homeless guy that just, some wanderer. And really, that's my Randall Flagg. That's why these homeless wanderer characters show up in my books so much. It's got to be because that guy who lived under my house. We never saw him again. I don't remember if my dad did something to, board up the crawl space or something. But that's the last of it.
I mean, shout out to your dad for just being like, yeah, I'll see what's under there.
He's like, I'll go crawl and see who this mysterious person is.
That's for sure a horror movie decision, and I respect it.
I never got that from my dad. He was fearless in all things. That has never been the case with me. I remember a bird got in my basement somehow one time, and it sounded like someone was moving around in the basement. The bird would fly, and it sounded like a person. And I was on the stairs, like with a baseball bat. I was like, oh, I got to get down here and get rid of this guy. I was like, all right.
That's amazing.
Go, Billy. Graham, come down. Let's get him, let's get him, boys. All right. I was like trying to scare him off. And I did make it to the basement, but man, there's a moment where our stairs were open, like someone could reach under and grab it. And that may be the most terrified I've ever been, is getting ready to take that step onto the open back steps, because I thought for sure there was a man in the basement, but it was just a bird. Just a dumb old bird.
Just a dumb old bird. Oh my goodness.
Well, Cullen, thank you so much for taking the time this morning to speak with us. Yes. We're really excited to see how this first arc ends, how the second arc begins, and to see where the rest of the story is going.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, that second arc, things are gonna ramp up real quick. So
I'm very excited to go through our internal servers today and just read the PDF, which is a benefit of getting to work here.
That's true. Yeah,
we get to read stuff ahead. It's the best.
Cullen, please tell the good people of the internet where they can find you.
So you can find me. My website is cullenbunn.com. You can get to me on all the socials that exist at Cullen Bunn. I have a Patreon is at Cullen Bunn. I have a Discord server. You can get to it all though from cullenbunn.com. That'll point you to everything you could possibly want. I do have a weekly e-newsletter that goes out completely free, and it's full of stories and hints of things to come and glimpses into the writing life. So again, and you can get to that from the website.
I love that. Thank you to everyone listening. If you haven't already, make sure you pick up Ghostlore issue 5 at your local comic shop, which starts a brand new arc. And volume 1 comes out just in November, early November. It'll be available everywhere November 14th. Very exciting. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to catch the full-length episode in podcast form anywhere that you find podcasts.
And if you want to stay up to date on all the cool things we have coming down the pipeline for Boom Direct, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast, and follow Boom Studios on social media.
Remember, comics are for everyone.
Which is why we make comics for everyone. I'm Anthony Mauro.
I'm Harley Salbacka.
And I'm Cullen Bunn.
And this is Boom Direct.
Cullen, that's about as good as we have ever done it. So
that is the best that we've done it with anybody.